last week, new exchanges are constantly coming to light. And this might be the most concerning, which is a big statement, obviously, when it comes to the Epstein file. So it's between Epstein and the Hollywood producer Barry Josephson. It's from February 20th, and it starts like this. There are two elements, really, to this email chain. So always, as you always do, you read from bottom to the top. Jeffrey, how old is she now? Best, Barry J. Now, Barry Josephson, as I say, Hollywood producer, 16, says Jeffrey Epstein. Thank you very, very much. Now, the subject line here is your niece. And then there's a reply from Barry Josephson who says, her full name again, is she in New York for a few weeks? And sorry, please have your office forward me her mum's contact info again. A friend is shooting a feature in NY and I'll try to get her in. So this is the modus operandi, isn't it? You know, you get someone in there, is it for modeling? I'm not sure. But anyway, thank you very, very much. They're 16. Anyway, there'll be pages and pages of this stuff in the emails. This is the part that seemed more unusual, I suppose. I hadn't quite realized that this type of thing was in this email cache. So it's still with the forward your niece. But this fella, Barry Josephson, says, cool, I'm excited. Also, I've been thinking a lot about that question that you asked Bill Gates, quote, how do we get rid of poor people as a whole, unquote. And I have an comment regarding that for you. When can I call you today to discuss this? So obviously how to get rid of all the poor. He didn't want to put in an email. So he saved that little plan, that little nugget for a phone call. Now, of course, as is often the case, there are two potential ways of reading this. It could be, it could be a question about how to kill all poor people, which seems more likely. Or it could be, we have to be fair, it could be a question about how you end poverty. If there's no poverty, there will be no poor people, right? You say, how do we get rid of poor people as a whole? A universal basic income, maybe. Maybe that's the angle they're going down. It would be a strange way of phrasing if that was the point, right? When people argue for a UBI, they don't normally say it's so we can eradicate the poor, but there we are. I suppose one thing that maybe does lead to thinking that second interpretation could be the case is that, as far as I understand, Bill...
Fucking hell, man. They're just, they're chatting it up on how to fucking just kill us, bro. They're chatting it up. They're chatting it up on how to kill us. No, I mean, it kind of doesn't make sense because they unironically need the poor in order for their capital generating system to continue existing the way it does, right? So it's more like, I think it's more like, how do we eliminate poor people feeling like they're poor? That's the idea. Like, we should normalize homelessness. We should normalize paycheck to paycheck. We should normalize your life standards decreasing year over year. That's the pitch.
Bill Gates has devoted a lot of time and energy to reducing poverty. I don't look at Bill Gates as someone who's trying to kill poor people. He has invested a lot of money, a lot of time in vaccination drives, in the kind of policies that have actually saved a lot of lives, especially in the poorest countries in Africa. So in that context, maybe you could read it like that. However, there is supporting evidence to suggest that the most uncharitable reading of this is true, and that Epstein really was thinking about genocide. How do we kill all the poor, Bill? And this is an article from the New York Times in 2019 about how Jeffrey Epstein hoped to seed the human race with his DNA. So basically, Epstein was quite into eugenics, and we wanted to use technology and selective breeding to make smarter humans. Already quite freaky. This is the kicker, though, in terms of how we interpret this initial email. The context here is that Epstein would invite top scientists for salons at his Manhattan apartment. And Steven Pinker, so the linguist.
Novara's fine. Novara's fine. They have a lot of different journalists that have different opinions. Some closer to ours, some not as close. But the work they do is good. All around, the work they do is very good.
And sort of evolutionary biologist is describing one of the conversations that took place there. This is from that NYTR article. The Harvard cognitive psychologist Steven Pinker said he was invited by colleagues, including Mark Novak, a Harvard professor of mathematics and biology, and the theoretical physicist Lawrence Krauss, to salons and coffee klatches at which Mr. Epstein would hold court. While some of Mr. Pinker's peers hailed Mr. Epstein as brilliant, Mr. Pinker described him as an intellectual imposter. He would abruptly change the subject, ADD style, dismiss an observation with an adolescent wisecrack, Mr. Pinker said. At one session at Harvard, Mr. Epstein criticized efforts to reduce starvation and provide healthcare to the poor because doing so increased the risk of overpopulation, said Mr. Pinker, who was there. Mr. Pinker said he had rebutted the argument, citing research showing that high rates of infant mortality simply cause people to have more children. Mr. Epstein seemed annoyed, and a Harvard colleague later told Mr. Pinker that he had been voted off the island and was no longer welcome at Mr. Epstein's gatherings. Stephen, so my process of looking at lots of these things is I see a tweet where someone shared the screenshot and you think, that is so wild, that must be fabricated, that can't be true. And then you read it again and you say, that's so wild, it must be that there is a slightly more anodyne interpretation for what has been said. But I do think Occam's razor here suggests that Jeffrey Epstein was asking Bill Gates, how do we kill all the poor people?
How do we get rid of poor people as a whole?
As a whole.
As a whole. I mean, I don't think there's two meanings there, really. Alleviate poverty, end poverty, as you say, abolish poverty, alleviate poor people as a whole. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
And I mean, it's dark because, I mean, he's friends with, Peter Thiel, and there is a kind of transhumanist, sort of post-human, let's leave ordinary people sort of behind as the detritus of history. I mean, it's quite similar to Nazism, right? So you have eugenics, and then you say, these are lesser humans.
Right.
They're a waste of time and space and oxygen. Let's have the Übermensch make babies with each other, and then we'll keep enough young, attractive women to service our needs. But beyond that, meh.
Yeah, I'll seed the human population with my DNA, and those will be the ones that we save, because those are the ones that are most like me, a member of this elite who gets to look at other human populations as though they're livestock. Like these.
This is an inevitable pattern of thought of all class societies that existed in the past and that will exist in the future. You have a particular system that you then confuse for the natural state of human society. So there's a very large conversation that is necessary, when talking about the difference between aka organic human society, in particular man-made systems that are made by man, but then hijack that relationship and end up having more influence over man than man has over said system, right? You have feudalism, you have capitalism, you have slave societies, whatever society in particular that you want to think about, there is always somebody that ends up on top and ends up creating, defining themselves at the top of whatever hierarchy exists there. And after a couple of decades, centuries, years, depending on the particular circumstances, because they keep winning, because they keep being on the top, and more importantly, because they are so separated, literally physically separated from the rest of their fellow humans, they end up not relating to them as much as one would expect a human to be able to relate to another human. So they start developing unironic thoughts of godhood, of true inherent superiority, etc., etc. Now, how do we do this in the past, right? In the past, we usually did it through religion. Like, we would usually say, the reason I'm a feudal lord, the reason I'm a king, the reason I get to own all the land and you work it, is because God decided this is the appropriate hierarchy for our nation. I mean, nations didn't exist, but for, let's say, kingdom, for our area, for our local village, for our town, for our city, for our entire continent. God decided this is what it's going to be like. You have your, you have what you've been dealt with in life. This card, the other one has the other card, and we got to live it. How does this same consequence of class hierarchy manifest itself in the 21st century, where we no longer believe, God, except maybe in India, where we no longer believe that God tells us what tier of life experience we deserve and what tier of life experience we don't deserve. That, God doesn't put us in our class. God doesn't put us in our caste and so on. How do we better explain it? Well, with the new religion, ciencia, science, etc., etc. So you start drinking your Kool-Aid. You start thinking that you are inherently superior to your fellow man because you happen to have succeeded in the particular system you find yourself in versus them who have not succeeded in this particular system, and you have to explain this superiority. If you were to explain the superiority through a dialectical materialist lens, you would come to the conclusion that it was pretty much mostly circumstance. You would realize that the reason you are a billionaire and somebody is not is circumstance, and that if you picked, a random fucking redneck from the Alapatias, and you gave him the exact same life that Elon Musk had, there is a 95% chance that he will end up being the richest man in the world or the richest woman in the world nonetheless. Yes? So, if you cannot participate in this sort of dialectical materialist analysis because it's going to make you feel bad and it's not going to let you sleep at night and it's going to make you realize that you can't necessarily feel superior towards others because you succeeded in the system, you have to start doing a little bit of eugenics, right? You got to start believing that there is something inherently superior in you that does not exist in other people. And if we do not look at material conditions, that can only be genetic code. And therefore, you start, again, drinking so much of your own Kool-Aid that you have to believe, in order for your worldview to be relatively consistent, you have to believe that certain people are born for greatness and certain people are born to fail. And if you want more great people such as yourself, you have to help the Untermenschen by allowing them to die off and making sure that they are either bred into a superior gene pool or that they are left behind as you go somewhere else and develop your superior gene pool. So we replaced God as our explanation to why your lot in life is what you deserve and you should not question it, with we replace religion with quasi-scientific ideas about genetics. That's it. And these people, you need to understand, proactive, class-conscious capitalists that consider themselves people who have earned the right to mold the world in their image, believe this, okay? This is the mainstream ideology of some of the wealthiest people on the planet. That's what it is. That's literally what it is. And they think it's altruistic. They think it's beneficial. Because they genuinely think they're better than you. They think you never stood a chance.
These views, they come straight out of the handbook for cattle management. Like, how do I stop my herd from overpopulating?
They literally call it defective altruism. Yeah. It's insane. But it's nothing new. That's the only thing I'm trying to tell you guys. There's nothing new about this. Absolutely nothing new. This is a room so yellow, I don't understand. Somebody has been messing with my lights. I'm gonna kill them. I am yellow Parenti. I am yellow Yugovnik.
Well, I'll just decrease healthcare or that sort of thing. It's not new. It's not a new way in which elites talk about ordinary people. It's, as you say, it has links to like Nazi ideology, but aristocrats talk this way in the 19th.
Yeah, but why? Okay, he's gonna make the point. Oh, very good.
Century and earlier about ordinary people. I'm sure that under full-on serfdom. Serfs were regarded much like cattle as well in many cases. They were useful for their productivity, but otherwise not really humans. And this is, I think this is just the view that elites take, because they imagine that being in the position that they are, which is one of wealth and power, means that they have some intrinsic superiority that got them there rather than chance or fate, like an intellectual superiority or a moral superiority or something like that, which allows them to cast these kinds of judgments or make these proposals.
Is that overstating the case slightly?
Why?
But to say that, because I don't think Mr. Epstein's views, I'm reading, the New York Times always refer to people as Mr. Epstein. I don't necessarily think his views are representative of the elite, right? I think there are certain people in the elite who believe them. But I mean, clearly Steven Pinker disagreed. I don't actually think Bill Gates is trying to kill all the poor. So, I mean...
Yeah, I'm talking about I was also talking about let's say, certain caste in the 1% of the 1% of the bourgeoisie that takes it upon themselves to mold the world in their image, okay? The more proactive ones, the true defenders of the status quo, that believe that the status quo will not be defended by them just sitting around, but through, let's say, active combat against alternative class-conscious forces.
He's expressing a particularly grotesque view that may circulate among elites and may also circulate among sort of non-elites. Obviously, Nazism was a popular project. So I'm not sure it is sort of just to say, okay, yeah, this is the elites. They hate poor people. They treat them like cattle, and they want them dead.
I didn't say
like,
all
that's
right.
It's one guy. I mean, it's obviously not just one guy. It's a few guys.
Yeah.
But I don't think we can sort of make that sweeping statement.
No, but I think it's a kind of view that you can associate with elites of all kind, right? It's not the kind of view that ordinary people have about like the groups that they belong to. It's.
I think lots of people think that they're the smart group and other people are the dumb groups.
Right, but then that's
the
a
worthy
positioning
groups,
themselves as an elite, right? In which case that's where that kind of view can arise. It's not, it's in the Nazi project, it's the idea that this is the master race, which gives rise to these kinds of views. And in this case, these cases, it's like these successful captains of industry are the master race, and it gives rise to that kind of view. But yeah, I don't think for a minute that every single person who's very rich or very powerful has these views, but they're definitely views that I associate with.
And we don't have to fucking, West brain. We don't all have to make it about race. It's not necessarily race. They genuinely think that they explain away their success by ignoring coincidence, luck, material conditions, and focusing on something special that makes them special and therefore deserving of more treats than any of the other kids in the school. So how do we make sure more special people like myself are born? Weird ass fucking eugenics. That's it. Thank you, Emma Snail, for the 8-month streak. Thank you very much.
With elites. In fact, it's the kind of a requirement to have the view that you consider yourself to be one of them or that you are one of them.
Potentially. I think you have a lot of... I mean, because it depends what you consider an elite, right? So there will be lots of people who think that the race next door are, less worthy and shouldn't really be there.
Sure.
Who might be not rich, for example. Obviously, they think of themselves as superior to the other person in some degree, but...
Yes, okay, fine. A sense of superiority.
A sense of superiority is required,
because
that's implied.
And superiority often comes attached to being elite in some way.
And I suppose there will be lots of elites who have the sense of superiority without the genocidal intent.
Of course, yeah.
He sort of combines both of them, which is very worrying. And
without the genocidal intent, but in de facto genocidal existence. Existing as a billionaire is de facto genocidal.
Crazy is
because of the long-term consequences hoarding so much wealth has on the world. By being a billionaire, you probably kill 5 people per hour.
He was the best friend of a Labour politician.
Probably a lot more. Somebody should do that calculation. By any means necessary. Nothing says smart like having a college degree your dad paid for. Do not learn about the Cuban woman with 4 degrees making sandwiches. Absolutely.
So the whole point of Peter Mandelson was to say, or the whole point of New Labour was to say, you know what we can do? we can ally with the very wealthy, but also do right for the working class. And I can see that if you're friends with
FML, when I go into German-occupied Poland, and I'm like, dude, the Polish interim government really do be starving its population, bro.
Bill Gates, right? He's a very wealthy man. Lots of criticisms to be made of the man, especially this week. But if you look at what he's actually done, as opposed to what might be in an email with Jeffrey Epstein, lots of money invested in vaccines, in mosquito nets, lots of things that have genuinely saved lots of lives. If Peter Mandelson was best friends with him, I can see how that could fit with the new Labour, how they like to present themselves. Being friends with literally the guy who is the billionaire pedo who wants to kill all poor people, I don't think there is any like, oh, there's a third way. There's a third way where we can be best friends with Jeffrey Epstein and still help the masses. No, there's not. This is impossible. He is a Nazi pedo freak who happens to, shower gifts on you and take you to lovely islands where sex crimes take place against children.
Yes, we choose our opinion on people based on things they say and where they invest their money, and not necessarily based on the long-term material influence and impact they have on the wider world. Ooh, I'm living out so hard.
Ovdje, 2. oktobra, misao Marksa I Lenina vladaju našim kongresom. Ovom kao, srcima I dušama sviju nas. 2. oktobra I misao Marksa, Engelsa I Lenina žive I stvaraju u neustrašivoj revolucionarnoj, proletejskoj, plebejskoj ličnosti druga Tita.